Come one, come all, lunchtime statistics and automation trends. You are the real heroes. We're glad that you're here to join us to look at some of the trends and some of the statistics that we at A3 are monitoring and that we see throughout the industry. So I'm Alex Shikany. I'm the Executive Vice President of A3. Pleasure to see all of you, some friendly faces, some new faces. Hopefully I'll have a chance to talk to you throughout the day after this session. I'd like to begin by just summarizing where kind of this content in this presentation is going to flow. So first of all, I'm going to cover high-level trends from A3 data, what we watch to see the temperature of the market globally and in North America, things that you can watch at your own companies to see how this market is developing and where the emphasis on demand is. And then I have some video examples of industries and applications that are deploying these technologies you see around us in more detail. After I'm done, I'm going to have my colleague Alex Coleman come up, and he has some data on the economy, on manufacturing, on artificial intelligence, and some other important topics. So we're going to hold questions until the end, and then you can drill us with the hardest ones that you can think of. And we're happy to help, however. It's worth noting all the statistics in my slides you have access to. Reach out to me. I can give you the detailed look. So this is where I want to begin. Optimism is rebounding. How do we know this? Well, number one, you could walk around and talk to a lot of these companies who anecdotally, personally have told me, and I've seen in their own testimonials, that the market is actually turning back upward. But this is data from Pew Research, and it actually shows you for the first time in a few years, right here, CEOs, global CEOs surveyed, almost 6 out of 10 believe that the global economy, measured by GDP, is going to improve. You can see that that's actually much different from where we were in 2024, where we were still below. More believed that we were going to decline. And then, of course, in 2023, you can see the disparity in the data there with far more negative sentiment than positive. So this is directionality to me. This is global CEOs of companies who are customers of the technologies that you see around you here at Automate. Let's go one step further. This is a survey from the World Economic Forum. This is their latest Future of Jobs survey. There's a lot of data within this that I encourage you, if you're kind of a data nerd like me, you want to dig into this, sink your teeth into. It's interesting to read through. Key takeaway here, trends, artificial intelligence and information processing technologies. Almost 9 out of 10 share of employers surveyed said that that is going to transform their business in the near term. That is a very high percentage. I think that probably won't come as too much of a surprise to anyone who's been keeping track of artificial intelligence and how disruptive it's been, not just to industrial automation, but to business practices, word processing, things like that. But look where robotics and autonomous systems lie. And of course, that's a core of what you're going to see around you here at Automate. 6 in 10, basically, say that that is going to transform their business in the near term. And even as you go down the list and you get into 30%, 20, 18, and the long tail here, you can see things that are around us at this show that still are going to be making an impact. Semiconductor and compute technology, of course, sensing, laser, and optical. We have a huge representation from that community here, and so on and so forth. I want to note that throughout this presentation, I'm going to reference data from Interact Analysis, which is a great firm that we partner with at A3, and you actually get, as A3 members, if you decide to join, priority access and more detail on their research. But they're great partners of ours. What you're seeing here is a survey they did. This is on automation buyers globally in their mobile robot buyer survey. They said, how much do you expect your company's spending on automation to increase or decrease in 2024. And you can see that this is skewed drastically toward the increase side. And it's leveled out here, and they note here that the mean average in the response was increase on average 18%. So customers of automation are telling you they expect to spend more, almost 20% more on average in the near future here, with drastically fewer saying that that's actually going to decrease. And so I often sit and I think, okay, long-term health of our industry, where are we going to be 10, 20 years from now? I find it almost impossible to think of a scenario where the technologies around us are going to be of lesser importance 10 years from now than they are right now. And the data I'm going to show you in terms of the swings in the market and the cyclicality, that's certainly present. and it's present in any industry. But in terms of linear trend, this industry around us is on its way up. Employment is a big issue, right? How are human beings going to be impacted by the robots you see around you, the collaborative robots, the artificial intelligence software, everything else, right? This, going back again, this is the same Future of Jobs survey from the World Economic Forum. Visual representation of their estimate on the impact on jobs in terms of automation technology. What you're looking at is the blue in the middle are stable jobs, essentially. Each unit represents 1 million jobs. The green on the right side are the jobs they believe stand to be created, due to these technologies and technological advancement. The red, or the, fuchsia color here on the left, are the jobs that they say destroyed or phased out or eliminated, in other terms. I like to view these as the, monotonous, the dull, the dirty, the dangerous, the things that are readily automatable, so to speak. But this is important. The green, by their estimate, outweighs the red. And they actually say in their data here, it's very small, so I'm going to point it out to you because I know it's small on the screen, increase of 7% or 78 million jobs by 2030. So you count the next 5 years. So all the stories you hear about robots doom and gloom, going to take the jobs, people aren't going to be able to work anymore, essentially, according to the World Economic Forum and others that are out there, this is one data point, as well as our own data, jobs are, frankly, changing. They're not going away. And we're not great at determining what these new jobs are going to be. So that's a little bit of a stage setter on the employment side of things that I wanted to offer you because it is a big topic of conversation. Okay, so I want to transition. That's kind of the broader landscape of optimism increasing, jobs stand to be increasing. They're going to be different. They're going to be higher tech, but they're going to, I hope everyone's okay. They're going to be different. This industry is going to continue to be very important to a lot of industries. We're going to talk about how. This is the robot order data for North America all the way up through 2024. And I'm starting with annual data because I'm going to get into the first quarter 25 and what's happening, but I want to show you annually what's transpired. COVID-19 happened. We pulled ahead a lot of orders. These were record years, and everyone in the industry was wondering, have we experienced a stepwise change in order magnitudes? Will we maintain? The answer was no. The answer was, for the past 2 years, this industry has essentially been flat and actually experienced a bit of a decrease coming down from record highs in 2022. When we pull out a little bit further and we look at the quarterly breakdown, this is the same data that I just showed you, a smaller time frame. You can see that over the course of every quarter, we were going up basically in a linear trend with some variability, and then we've dropped to this kind of plateau for about the last 2 years. We've been in kind of this cyclical but stable stepwise area here. This is first quarter data, and I'm going to break this down here for you in a couple slides. It is showing an upward trend and emergence into growth again. How does this data break out into automotive and non-automotive? You're going to see a lot of automotive applications. We know that the automotive industry is still the largest customers globally, both OEMs and component suppliers for robots and automation technology globally. However, that is and has been changing over the course of last few years. You can see the red bars, which are non-automotive, actually in several years here, going during COVID and 1 year during COVID here, actually exceeded automotive because they were not selling as many EVs as they thought they would, and they had to basically put a pause on that plan, go back to the drawing board, reformulate their strategy for how they were going to, produce vehicles moving forward. And that's actually changed in the first quarter. We've seen a resurgence, spoiler alert, in automotive. But non-automotive has steadily been increasing, in fact, on average, on a faster pace than the blue bars on average. Let's look now at the first quarter. This is now first quarter growth rates. This is the latest data available, and I should point out to you as we go through the next couple slides, this is order data. So this is forward-looking. These are bookings, not shipments. If you were at the IFR roundtable earlier, they report on shipments. Those are units that are installed at customer locations. It's a more firm indicator looking backward on what's happened over time. But these are orders, new bookings. You can see that, like I mentioned, automotive OEMs ordered a tremendously greater number of robots in the first quarter relative to what they did last year. The plastics and rubber industry also had a pretty good quarter, but everything else was essentially down. And when you put all of that together, what you come up with is essentially flat performance in the first quarter, year over year. We were under 1%, so within the margin of error there in terms of growth. You can essentially think of it as flat. When we go to the application side, where were the robots being deployed? What were they doing? Well, arc welding was up 30% in the first quarter. Substantial growth. Material handling is by far our largest application on a global scale. This is things like picking, palletizing, wrapping, anything where a robot manipulates an object to put it into a box or to change its position, things like that. That grew 14%. Interestingly enough, though, pretty much everything else decreased. And the highest magnitude was one of our smaller, more nascent categories, assembly, which was down 50%. So take that, and then let's go one layer deeper. Let's take the total magnitudes I just showed you, and for the first time, we're very excited to be able to actually break out to you what happened with collaborative robots within the total market. This has been, we've been working on this for a very long time, but we now have a really good representation of the market in North America. And I know the numbers are a little small, so I'm going to walk through this a little bit for you. The red are the number of collaborative robots. The bar is the total number of units by industry for the first quarter. The red are collaborative, and the blue are what we would refer to in this case as traditional industrial or non-collaborative units. Takeaways here are that all other industries, which includes warehousing, agriculture, forestry, anything not listed or discretely broken out here, 24% of that industry, which is the highest that we had, are collaborative, which indicates that among all available segments, non-automotive is the highest consumer by share of units ordered of collaborative units. You go down the list and you see life sciences, pharma, and biomedical, food and consumer goods. These are both over 20% of their total collaborative units, which is interesting to track. Automotive, you can tell, automotive OEMs, that's a big number, and it drove growth in the first quarter, but only some 5% were attributable to collaborative units. So this is interesting. Over time, we're going to continue to track this. We'll be able to provide you growth rate data so you can compare traditional versus total versus just collaborative. But this was the first quarter we were able to actually report on these numbers. The final thing I want to point out to you is this is a pie chart showing you just the collaborative units, which industries did they go to. So this is basically share of collaborative distribution in North America. And the takeaway here is that while over just about 56% of the total number is automotive related in the total case, only about, let's look here, let's do live math, 24%, 19% plus 5%, 24% of collaborative robots are going to automotive applications. And you can see the rest of the data here, this being the automotive, the all other industries that I mentioned. So collaborative robots are in large degree being deployed in North America in non-automotive applications, though not exclusively, more so than the total. Now, I'm going to bring it back to the trend again. This is a quarterly graph. I showed you a little snippet of this earlier. Just to point out again, like I do every year, this area here above the trend line is what we experienced during COVID-19. This pull ahead of ordering, this major record levels, everybody was happy selling units, inventorying units. This area right here is kind of the result coming out of that with some of the uncertainty recently. There's a lot of variables rolled in here, but in a general sense, I believe, and the data show, that optimism is returning and we're on this growth trajectory once again, upward. So I do want to spend a few slides talking about, North American machine vision market. The total market for machine vision technologies, which encompasses cameras, lenses, lighting equipment, smart cameras, you name it, software, was actually down 1% year over year. And you're going to notice themes and parallels between what I just showed you for robotics with machine vision. They're not terribly different in terms of the movement, so keep that in mind. $2.8 billion in terms of the North American market in 2024. This is Q1 data now. Q1 data is your red bars, and the blue bars are the first quarter of last year. Some good news stories in terms of growth in areas like component cameras, for example. These are companies that produce cameras that don't have any onboard intelligence. They're separate and discrete from smart cameras, which I'll report on in the next slide. But they were up almost 5%. You look at lighting technologies. They had a good quarter as well, up almost 6%. But certain other areas had difficult quarter. Optics was down slightly, though I am hearing that there's optimism there for the future. They're just ironing out some uncertainty and some supply chain issues on the whole. And then software was the other one that was in the negative at minus 16%. But you can tell it's a smaller category, so it's a little bit more variable. These are systems. So I just reported to you the component categories. These are the systems. And the difference here is that ASMV, which we refer to as application-specific machine vision systems, these are multiple technologies pulled together essentially to create turnkey solutions to a given application. So these incorporate a number of different technologies within them and are sold as a package or a turnkey system. Biggest category we measure at almost 500 million from a quarterly perspective. You can see they were actually up, which is a good sign. Smart cameras, another large category in the grand scheme of our data set, 125 million or so, was also up 6%. So even though it was mixed between the categories, largely positive when you look at year over year in a moderate growth situation. Moderate overall growth was, I believe, 1.4% overall, the total number. So robotics was about 0.4%. Machine vision on the whole in North America was about 1.4%. Same story here. I just wanted to visually point out to you that we did experience this on the vision side as well, same type of thing, but I do believe we've turned this corner here and we're starting to return to historical growth patterns. I want to bring in Interact Analysis again. I think they do some good research on this topic now, and if you have more questions on anything I show, I see Blake Griffin here. I know their entire team is at the show. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. We're switching now into a global mode for machine vision. This is global estimates by Interact Analysis, but I wanted to give it to you because I thought it was additional color commentary on this market. So their projection for 2025, which is right here in the middle of this graph, 1.5% growth, which is modest, but frankly in line with what our first quarter data for North America showed year over year. But then you can see that they're more optimistic as you get into future years. This market is going to quicken in terms of its growth rate and increasing magnitude as we go, according to them. And what are the drivers of this stepwise change? Well, they've put together a nice matrix here for you. Just to briefly summarize, tariffs, anybody's guess, roll the dice. If you know, you're going to be on a beach somewhere soon, I'm sure, because you're going to be a very rich person. No one knows, it's to be determined. It's changing by the day. The ground is shifting below our feet. But let's focus on the red cells for a moment. Growth in manufacturing and automation, high impact on machine vision. We all know the importance of inspection and measurement and these applications for those technologies you see around you for vision. Let's jump down to the other red box. Emerging industries and applications, these new areas. You're talking about medical field, you're talking about electronics, even agriculture, some of these other new emerging areas that are not very highly penetrated. And then, of course, our best friend here, AI and deep learning, which is impacting the vision space, I would say, arguably the most out of all the different technologies. You see a lot of overlap between machine vision software and technologies and artificial intelligence, and a lot of vision companies with AI popping up in their names and products. So those are the high drivers, according to Interact Analysis. The other things here that are kind of impacting everybody on a broader scale, digitalization, labor shortages are listed as medium, and you can see the rest of the data there for you. Okay, so that's the data. I don't see anybody sleeping yet. That is awesome. You guys are great. I love people who love data. But I'm transitioning now into more pictures and video. And I want to talk to you about trends. I want to talk to you about, as A3, and talking to all these companies that we got to join us here at this great event, where is the technology headed? What industries are ordering more of these technologies? A lot of industries, as we showed in the data, currently use these technologies. But there are a number of really emerging spaces we think it's important to point out. 3 of them, warehousing. I'm going to focus and show you an example. Agriculture, outside the factory, in the fields, helping our food supply, where labor shortage is really starting to become an issue, and construction. How do we make homes more affordable? How do we do things that allow people to actually purchase homes, that do things that are safer do jobs safer for employees that we'll talk about. Okay, so let's start with warehousing and logistics. This is data from Pitney Bowes. This is U.S. parcel volume estimates. You can see that during basically the period during COVID-19, we spiked, then it leveled off, and now we're into this 25-26 period where, well, guess what? We're ordering more things. There's more parcels in the mail. People are getting products shipped to their homes again. Buying patterns are returning. Estimated 26 billion parcels by the end of next year in terms of volume. So that places obviously a lot of demand on the companies who are fulfilling this demand for us, I suppose. Amazon being one of them. This is an NBC News example. I'm going to play this video. I think it runs about 2 minutes potentially, but they do a good job, I think, incorporating all the elements I wanted to point out to you.
If you want to know how automation, AI, and people are working together, you can see it inside this 3 million square foot building where Amazon employs more than 1,400 people and stores up to 40 million products. Amazon says it logged its biggest Thanksgiving holiday shopping period ever this year, and data shows consumers spent a record $10.8 billion online on Black Friday alone, 10% more than last year, making this kind of efficiency the future.
I'm hearing shrink.
It's possible because here everything is containerized. Instead of humans walking miles a day to get products off the shelves, the items are put into blue and yellow bins that robots can easily maneuver.
We don't want people to lift heavy objects. We don't want people to take boxes and put it over their head or reach down really low. If we can have a robotic system do that for our employees, all the better.
Through Amazon's upskilling program, people who used to do manual labor jobs are now moving into jobs overseeing, repairing, and programming these machines. Amazon says these roles can offer pay that's up to 40% higher than entry-level jobs. Once the items are sorted, they head here to Sequoia, where humans and robots work together.
The goods are coming to the person on demand at just the right time, and we designed the system in order to be ergonomic for our people, right?
Yeah. So he's not bending down, he's not reaching
Exactly.
up.
There's no ladders to reach up. He's not bending down on his knees, right? It's in the Goldilocks zone or the power zone.
That's right.
Brady
This
says
is Proteus. As you can see, it's carrying a bunch of Amazon items ready for delivery, and it has little eyes on its face, and it can sense when we're close to it. It'll chirp and stop when it notices people are in the way. Please, carry on.
it looks like a Roomba on steroids, but these robots work on the floor, and when there aren't enough of them, human workers push and pull those heavy carts. Brady says the future will never be fully automated because people need to design and program the robots and keep them running.
So in that video, you saw pretty much every single technology in one form or fashion that you could walk into somebody's booth and see. You saw, of course, the mobile robots here, plenty of those that automate. You saw the scanners as they were identifying the objects coming into that work cell that the human was there. You saw lighting equipment, making sure that the sensors could pick up good data. You even saw an articulated robot arm there in the beginning of the video moving parcels around and placing. That is a nice little microcosm of a solution mindset that is very present here at a show like Automate. You don't just see one component doing something repetitively. You see an environment that is being created at companies like Amazon and others in the warehousing space that's using every technology you see here as 21st century tools for the employees they do have to use. What does that do for the companies like Amazon? Makes them more attractive to go to work for. You can attract the young people who probably grew up on a first robotics team or going to school doing these types of projects. They want to go work with the stuff in the field. They don't want to go to an antiquated old facility. And so it makes the companies in this space more attractive. It makes them more efficient. And frankly, it solves and starts to address that labor shortage, the labor gap, where 586,000 open manufacturing-related jobs that can't be filled because there aren't people to plug in. And so this is a really interesting example, I think. In warehouses, we're going to continue to see technology like this being deployed in multiple situations, not just Amazon, but of course, other large companies like that and medium and small companies. Just to point out to you that robot adoption, warehousing, logistics we just talked about, but also in a manufacturing context. If you were at our startup competition yesterday, there were a lot of technologies, at least a few of them, in the finalist category that dealt with autonomous mobile robots. We had dynamic safety from 3 Laws. We had airport mobile robots with AirTrack. robotics. And so there's a lot of R&D, there's a lot of venture funding, there's a lot of innovation happening in the AMR and AGV space. And so it's going to be dynamically shifting, even in the next year, as we go forward from Automate at this point. You know, the growth in AMRs, of course, coincides with other trends like growth in IoT, connectivity. They need to understand their environments, sensing equipment. All of those things roll up into this AMR category. And a lot of them have onboard solutions for all of that, which is great by the manufacturers. And when they don't, there are companies in the supply chain that can assist and outfit. You know, it's not just AMRs, though. How many people here have heard of this little-known term called humanoid robots? Nobody. I see a lot of head shaking. Okay, well, let me tell you. No. Humanoid robots are pretty much everywhere in the headlines these days. You open up X or any social media, and you probably see a headline. Or if you opened it yesterday, you saw Optimus doing its little dance there on the screen. This is just a cross-section, by the way, of the different humanoid robot manufacturers. Optimus being over here from Tesla. You have Apollo and Apptronic. Sanctuary has a product called Phoenix. Figure, this is their first version. They're, I think, almost on their, if not already on their third version. Digit being here at the show. And then, of course, Atlas and Boston Dynamics here. But it's not just these. We're pretty much in a heads-up race in the humanoid space with China in the United States. China recently announced earlier this year that they have a humanoid robot training facility, or training ground, as they put it. And there's a video of this that I didn't include because it's a little bit long, but it basically shows you what looks to be a military training ground, if you will, with humanoid robots, but not in the scary sense, in the data collection sense. They're doing a bunch of different things, picking stuff up, dropping it, moving around, stomping in place, going from point A to point B, and it's basically their way of collecting a massive data set so that they, in their eyes, are positioned in a better place to train this technology as it evolves and gets more sophisticated. And so what are we doing in the United States? That's my question, and that's why we're advocating in Washington. We believe that the United States, North America, that globally, all regions, not just China, should be incentivizing companies like Agility and like Apptronic and Figure and the ones I showed before, incentivizing them to adopt those technologies or test or pilot so that they can learn faster and we can get to the end result safely and quicker. But this is all kind of a warehousing context. I bridged from warehousing and logistics over to AMRs and now over to humanoids. I mentioned farming and agriculture. This is important, and you're going to see more stories from major news outlets and cable news and things like that that weren't previously covering technology stories like this in the years to come. This is a story. This is Lester Holt, NBC News. They did a story on the future of farming, and the story that they highlighted had to do with a large weeding robot that was basically a mobile data center. Millions of sensors, millions of data points being collected. The image of that, some part of it at least here, is up in the right-hand corner. It uses lasers to traverse the fields to identify and kill weeds with lasers faster and more efficiently than humans could ever do. Sometimes weeds as small that a human eye couldn't actually identify. So they're using algorithms and AI to identify what that looks like in the soil or what the roots look like, and then zapping it in microseconds, essentially. So it looks and smells, in the video they say it smells like popcorn in the field because they're rolling over the crops and they're just zapping a bunch and you can see the smoke. It's pretty cool. Video's a little long, so I didn't show it here, but I wanted to leave you with, there's more technology in the agriculture space that you can discover even here at Automate. You know, we had a startup competition yesterday, Rotate 8. They are an agricultural company. If you're interested in seeing them, they're an early stage startup. They're over in the startup pavilion, but they can talk to you about some of the applications, unique things that they're doing with automation in the agriculture space. I do have a video for construction. I think it's cool to show this video partially because it's what they claim to be the largest robot arm ever created. This is a company called FBR out of Australia, and I believe it's about a minute long, so let's have a look.
FBR is a West Australian-based robotics technology company that has designed, developed and manufactured the world's most advanced construction robot, the Hadrian X. The global construction industry is in need of long-term, viable and sustainable solutions to current skilled labour shortages, workplace health and safety challenges, waste minimisation, time and cost overruns, and to meet the ever-growing demand for housing. FBR has developed a real and meaningful solution to these problems through the Hadrian X construction robot. A fully mobile, versatile solution providing technology breakthroughs that allow for significant reductions in waste, vast improvements in worksite safety, unparalleled speed and efficiency gains, along with a unique wall-as-a-service delivery model that provides time and cost efficiencies for builders unseen to date. With the capability to build structures up to 4 stories high and of any size, of almost any design, 24 hours a day, 7 days per week, in most weather conditions.
So you can tell they actually just completed, by the way, a build in the United States, their first build in the United States with that robot, which I thought was pretty cool. And you could see a world potentially, if this gains traction in the construction space, where the cost to build a home or the time to completion drastically reduced given the deployment of these Hadrian X robots. Empowering the people. You saw people in the video. There's still human, people working. But when they can't find the people to do it or the conditions aren't conducive to it, technology can step in. All right, so to conclude my talk, I want to talk about just AI for a moment here. What you're looking at is a global graph here. This is where are the AI models? And the dark blue is United States and China. There's also a dark blue here. It's a little bit lighter shade, but this is Western Europe, essentially, the UK. This is where the AI models are originating from. And I thought this was interesting because this is from a recent 2025 AI Index survey. And this is basically showing you that there's a heads-up race in terms of pumping out AI algorithms and AI models between 2 countries primarily, the United States and China. And to keep your eye on that, and it's well publicized, of course, with ChatGPT and other AI solutions that we as consumers use all the time. You likely hear about this. But there are other countries like Canada and the UK and Western Europe that are also kind of pumping out more solutions and AI models. Now, the performance of these AI models this is an updated graph on the performance of AI relative to a human baseline. The dotted line is the human baseline at 100%. And I can just tell you, because I know unless you have NASA-grade vision, you're not going to be able to read that in the back. Image classification, medium-level reading comprehension, I'm just listing the tasks for you. Language understanding, PhD-level science questions, visual reasoning, English language understanding, competition-level math, and understanding. Basically, everything that humans do is segmented and represented by one of these colored lines. Here's the takeaway. They're all pretty much now above the human baseline. So AI is now more capable in pretty much every area I just listed for you, except a few more recent ones, than humans are. Which begs a lot of questions, a lot of ethical questions, a lot of questions about employment and unemployment. However, we can't overlook, in lieu of trying to get answers to those questions, we can't overlook the promise. And the promise is present when you look at areas like medicine. And this final video I have for you is a CNN piece on drug discovery that used an AI model to get to a solution and a treatment much quicker.
Developing new medications has historically been a slow process, requiring years of trial and error research, millions of dollars, and often luck.
Finding drugs is like finding needles in haystacks.
But Dr. Alan Aspudu-Guzik and his team say AI can speed everything up. Last year, using 3 separate applications of AI, Aspudu-Guzik's lab created a new compound that could help treat a type of liver cancer in a fraction of the time it takes for most drug discoveries.
AI is good about finding patterns that the humans don't find as obvious. We use all that data to do less trials, less computational attempts at finding the solution.
Combined with automated robots, they could fine-tune that design faster than humans can, with what they call a self-driving lab.
So this is a robot that allows us to actually carry out liquid dispensing, powder dispensing, etc. Combined with that robot, we can actually make our reactions happen here.
So you're not standing over a little flame holding a beaker.
AI helped us go 200 times faster to find the best molecule. So every time we made a molecule, AI found hints. It's like a sleuth, right? And told us this is the next best molecule to make.
All in, it took the lab just 30 days to find a potential drug compound for liver cancer, in what normally takes a year or 2.
So think about this as a productivity tool for scientists. If the scientists can be thinking higher level things, can be organizing experiments that are way more parallel, we can actually accelerate scientific discovery. What we want the scientists to do is to be more productive to solve the problems that are pressing for society nowadays.
So 30 days versus 1 to 2 years of drug discovery for a potential liver treatment. Stories like that are going to become more common. AI is really good at identifying and following up on patterns. This is one really interesting overlap and case that I think we're going to see a lot of benefit from using AI. Okay, to wrap up and bring up my Alex 2, or Alex Coleman from A3. The full year January to December as surveyed from our membership is still positive. This was from earlier this year, but we're still performing in this 1 to 10% growth range, which almost half of our members believed was going to happen in 2025. And that has not changed at this moment. There's still optimism out there. You can ask any exhibitor you walk around and talk to about this. I've summarized into 2 quick slides. Bullish future for automation because we're reducing the dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs. We're still early innings, to use a baseball reference, in terms of deployment in these non-automotive spaces, so there's a lot of upside potential. And it's empowering workers. The point I made about people coming into the workforce want to use this 21st century tool. They don't want to be placed into jobs that are yesterday's jobs necessarily. Finally, labor shortages in the next 10 years, we're up against it. It's not going anywhere. Demographic shifts, the birth rate, declining populations, these are all factors working against the ability to hire and find the right people for jobs, which creates an opening for automation to help solve issues. And then, of course, the standard, the tried and true value proposition of all the technologies around you here at Automate, improving product quality and reducing production costs. And so, thank you. I know we still have time. I would like to now transition over to my colleague, Alex Coleman, who's going to go into the second half of the presentation. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex, also. And as Alex mentioned, we will be covering some of the trends. So we're going to circle back for a quick moment here and take a look at some of the broader economic measures. There's been a lot of turbulence and breaking news the last few weeks, so I thought we would take a look at some of those key metrics that have been shifting. The first is the GDP numbers. The most recent GDP numbers have been flashing a little bit of a warning sign, minus 0.3%, coming after a good 2.4% back in Q4. And anyone from the Oval Office down to the corner office who was hoping for some help from the Fed when they saw those numbers is going to be disappointed. The Fed is keeping things continuing at that target of 4.25 to 4.5%. And against that, inflation is also still not tamed. 2.3% year over year in April, with the Fed noting that there is a continued risk, especially coming off of tariffs, for inflation to continue. Here's just a visual representation. You can see inflation in the orange dotted line is still sitting above that green 2% target where the Fed would ideally have it be. And against the backdrop of slowing GDP and stubborn inflation, there's always that kind of vague background fear of stagflation. The still strong labor market is providing a little bit of comfort against that prospect, so I wouldn't see that coming just yet. As a quick recap, while not great numbers on the macroeconomic side, things appear to be holding up stronger than might have been expected maybe in March or April when a lot of the tariffs were announced and there was a lot of that doom and gloom talk. So I think going to Alex's point, the broader sentiment is still holding up. That continues when you look at the manufacturing pulse, so to say. The PMI is sitting at 48.7, right below kind of a median value of 50. This is an index where basically 50 is status quo, above 50 a positive reading, below 50 a negative reading. There are still negative readings on new orders and backlog sub-indexes, but these most recent numbers were a couple weeks old, and while this report is compiled monthly, I don't think it reflects some of the more positive developments we've seen on trade and tariffs. Looking on the factory side, pretty flat, plus 0.3% month over month, and manufacturing capacity use sitting just below the mean means that there is still a lot of room for growth in the coming months before you kind of bump into any kind of supply or resource constraints. On the labor side, as Alex mentioned, there are still a lot of job openings going unfulfilled. It is down 12% year over year, but that is from record high COVID era levels, and it's still very high above the 2019 average. The quit rate was holding steady, the hourly overtime commitments were holding steady, and hourly earnings were up quite appreciably, 3.8% year over year. So if you're making the case to companies that we can help you with your labor shortage concerns, that is still a really valid argument to make, in my opinion. It's backed up by the data. On the capital and durable goods import sides, here the blue line, unfortunately blue and green, not super differentiated on this screen, but hopefully you can tell. The blue line shows capital goods, while the green line shows those durable goods. That's basically kind of things that are expected to be used over the next couple of years, not immediately consumed. The spike in durable goods, but not a corresponding spike in capital goods, in my opinion, is coming from a lot of front-loading of inventories for tariffs, a lot of consumer goods imported, and not necessarily big investments in new capacity. So how does that tie in? Well, with the most recent kind of conciliatory talks, I'll say, about trade de-escalation, dropping tariffs by 115%, which would ordinarily get a huge round of applause, means that they're now still standing at 30% coming from China. There is a mechanism to avoid tariffs being raised again, and this is a 90-day pause. So all positive indications from where we were just a week or two ago, but I think that you might still see a few bumps in the road, both as these talks continue and from a more practical point of view, the lag time in the supply chain. From production in China till it hitting American shores is weeks or months, and as we see that potentially bullwhip effect play out of purchases being discontinued or delayed and then being resumed, there might be a few little bumps along the road. Going forward and taking a little bit of a longer view, the US is focused on building supply chain for strategic necessities, in the words of the administration. That might mean critical medications, semiconductors, chips, steel. We'll see if those things actually come to pass, but that is the goal they're aiming for. Taking a look at now capital markets, in my mind this is the IPOs, the venture capital, the companies being invested in the startup space. The IPO overview, the IPOs in 2025 have gotten off to a lot stronger start. As you can see here, this is data from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Q1 of 25 is tracking well above Q1 of 2024 in the far right in the little box there. Those are just quarterly, while the previous columns are years. So some of that energy was great coming into the year, but it seems like it might be fading a little bit headed into Q2. AI is specifically seeing some pushback on valuations. For instance, a cloud provider saw a reduction in the size of their IPO, and a major investor had to come in and kind of backstop that IPO. So this is one thing that I'll be talking about further, but I think the IPO market is showing that AI companies are going to be facing a little bit of a test on fundamentals. Are they actually connecting? Are they actually finding product market fit? Because until now, they've kind of been getting a blank check. Now taking a look at some of the data that we have collected on the venture capital side. This is 1 year, year over year, basically, that tracks 187 deals that we were able to find information on for companies that are operating in the industrial automation and robotics space. I'll get that graph a little bigger here. And here you can see venture capital rounds really drove the activity, both in terms of deal volume and cash volume. That's the top figure there. The public market was defined by a few large transactions from well-established companies, and early stage equity like the seed rounds showed plenty of transaction volume, albeit at much lower amounts. Overall, across the various categories, activity in 2025 was cooling compared to previous years. The deal count was okay, but dollar volume is running 60 to 70% of the prior quarter's pace. And to me, that just kind of reflects a little bit of a wait and see environment that I'm sure you've heard about throughout all the various areas. It's also hitting on the venture capital side. Actually analyzing and digging into those 187 deals, we found that there were a few big areas. AI and machine learning is not going to be a surprise to anyone. I won't belabor the point. Manufacturing continued to remain a stalwart, but as Alex mentioned, the emerging areas, logistics and supply chains. We saw a lot of investments in aerospace and drone technology, healthcare and medical devices, even outside of the traditional surgical robot space. There was a really interesting company that was doing a lot of work with robots for rehab. patient physical therapy and rehab is going to be a huge consideration with an aging population, and taking some of that workload off of PT so that they can focus on the most urgent cases or provide a higher quality of care is going to be huge. Autonomous vehicles, and this was autonomous vehicles of all types, on-road, transport, heavy trucking, off-road, industrial, all of it was seeing investments, and so those are kind of some of the areas that stuck out to me that maybe 5 years on we'll see a greater presence at the show. The trends in venture capital, I really think were defined with these little synopsis. AI is visible. The majority of business descriptions and products mentioned AI and machine learning as being a part of their product's value. No surprises there. Those diverse applications. Manufacturing is still core, but we are seeing automation find other niches that it can be successful in. Another big one, and this one I think in my mind might go to the top of the list, maybe right behind AI. Full stack robotics. The idea that it is not just the hardware or just the software sitting in a silo, but hardware, software, the machine learning models that power it, all coming together, maybe under one umbrella, but at the very least, very tightly integrated. And then lastly, to round it out, data as a moat. It goes hand in hand with both AI and the full stack robotics concept. If you are not collecting data or not collecting as much data as you could on the job site or in testing, consider doing so. It's worth it. That data, as we've seen with large language models, is basically worth its weight in gold and maybe a going consideration in the next couple of years, depending on how copyright plays out and machine learning training plays out. Gathering that data now, if you have the ability to do so, is probably worth it. And then lastly, just kind of a procedural note, these valuations have gotten larger and larger as they've raised larger and larger rounds, but it also seems like the burn rates are also increasing. This is partly borne out by higher expenses that we've seen from inflation across all of the categories, but operating in these businesses is becoming capital intensive, and I think that might place a little more demand on finding that product market fit for companies. We'll kind of buzz through some of these AI trend slides here because they've been covered by Alex very well. There were a few that I wanted to identify. We're seeing them out on the show floor here, and it's a variety of trends that I think are going to kind of be in the near term, which for AI means probably the next 2 weeks, but we'll call it 6 months. AI quality control. This is a huge benefit when you are looking at manual inspection. Manual inspection might be considered inconsistent, slow, costly, lacking real-time feedback. When the AI comes in, it is better consistency. It has better opportunities to integrate with other parts of your supplier production chain. And so that stood out to me as one of the areas that we're going to see increased development on. We identified it as A3 Market Research in our recent machine vision report. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, I go into more depth in it there than I will have time to cover now. But it's been an area that's going to continue to evolve in importance. Edge AI, cloud AI, and cloud in general clearly is not going anywhere. There's a section coming up that shows just how significant of an impact AI and cloud AI is having. But this is still a trend to be aware of. Not all data needs to go to the cloud, and having that AI either on premises or on unit is opening up opportunities for better processing, better data gathering, better decision making. So another important area. Then looking a little further down the road, like I mentioned with AI, that's 6 months, it will be the idea of agentic AI. This is moving beyond that traditional chat interface and going into an embodied application, into something in the field, something interacting with your intranet or the broader internet. And everybody else seems to think that this is coming. In a survey of leading US IT companies, 68% expect to be employing it in 6 months or less. Some companies aren't even waiting 6 months. Microsoft recently said that 20 or 30% of their code base in their new projects is written by software. So that time has already come. It might be unevenly distributed amongst the companies. Obviously, computer science companies, software companies have found the easiest product market fit, but I believe it is coming. For robotics, it'll look something like this, where McKinsey says 63% of leaders have a positive view of the impact that AI will have on the speed, delivery, and deployment of robots and their use in the field. It'll mean faster production cycles. It'll mean more adaptable robotics that can meet high-mix, low-volume needs. I wanted to take a quick side detour here into the idea of the impact of all this AI use. And is there going to be kind of an energy crisis? two little vignettes that I think capture some of the challenges associated with heavy AI use. An AI conversation is 10 to 30 times the energy of a Google search. And per the CEO of OpenAI, saying please and thank you to ChatGPT when you're talking to it, while good manners, is consuming millions of dollars worth of power. What that looks like in the field is that demand is far outpacing every previous forecast. The US for decades had essentially flat or non-growth in demand. Now the 5-year forecast for peak demand is going to double. That will mean 38 gigawatts of power expected to need to come online through 2028, which, to kind of put that in terms, is an extra 30 million households worth of power. And why does it matter to us? Energy impacts where, when, how, and even if AI or industry can be deployed. There we go. What's driving this demand? Well, data centers is one of the biggest singular factors. It's seeing $1 trillion in investment in the next 5 years, and whether you're calling that Project Stargate or just the regular old AWS data center, it is all adding up to a huge amount of energy demand. Energy for cooling and energy to run the computers in the data centers. Manufacturing is also a great driver. $400 billion in commitments since 2021, and we hope those numbers will continue to go up. And then two that are a little outside of our niche, the growing electrification of transport and extreme weather demands. Heat cycles are getting more and more significant, and the load it places on HVAC is actually coming back to hit all of these other things we identified. It's more heat and cooling demands on data centers. So all cumulatively tied together, you're seeing a basically doubling of forecasted demand over what it was a year ago. Where is this demand actually hitting? Northern Virginia in so-called Data Center Alley. Out where I'm from in Arizona, in the Southwest, you're seeing tons of semiconductor plants come online. They consume a ton of power and a ton of water. And while it's a great higher order use compared to the alfalfa fields they were replacing, it means a lot more energy is required. We also have manufacturing. The Southeast has batteries, EVs, manufacturing, and the Midwest is seeing growing demand from industry. So if you have clients in these areas, which cover a huge swath of the United States, there's a really solid chance that power will be a consideration for the next few years. Backing it up is this map prepared, which breaks down some of the major power grid subdivisions within the US. The blue dots showing the current megawattage that is being used by data centers, and the yellow representing the expected growth in capacity used by data centers in those power grids. What does this all mean? Well, energy is prosperity and productivity. Being efficient is great, but one of the big challenges is that a lot of green energy capacity is not able to meet these demands because of the differentiation between variable and baseline loads. As a quick vignette, something like aluminum smelting, if there's a power loss, the whole plant is destroyed. On a little bit less dramatic of a level for a data center, that might mean not being able to meet service level agreements or having to kick on diesel generators. So, in short, photovoltaics, green energy sources just aren't really able to carry these loads yet consistently. Hopefully there's continued growth in generation and battery and storage technologies to meet it, but for right now, it means that nuclear might be having its moment back in the sun. I don't know if that's a little pun on photovoltaics, but nuclear is coming back. Fortunately, a few plants in the US that were shuttered, including 3 Mile Island, pictured there, Duane Arnold in Iowa, and Michigan's Palisades plant, virtually right down the street, is going to be able to reopen. They were put into storage under a concept called Safe Store, which was effectively taking the wheels off your car, draining out the fluids, and putting it up on jacks. And now, putting the wheels back on and getting that plant going is going to be an easier step. Microsoft made a purchase agreement that is essentially influential in reopening 3 Mile Island, with the majority of that power purchase going to fuel their new data centers. So, not to belabor the point, but rising industrial power prices are going to make energy efficiency in robotics and AI an actual consideration. It's not just kind of greenwashing, it is genuine dollars and cents. Regional investments in AI or even factories may need to follow grid capacity. You might see more data centers going in where there's excess grid capacity, or at the very least the grid isn't seeing the same load on it. And I would expect the same thing would follow on industry. As factories become increasingly consuming power for all of the automation that's hopefully deployed in them and the products they produce, you'll need to see grid follow suit. So to wrap up, 3 key takeaways that I kind of felt came across from the data that we've seen, both in Alex's slides and mine. The next 6 months economically are going to be shaped by tariffs and interest rates. That's one of the biggest known unknowns. Supply chain normalization, how is that going to play out? How are we going to rebound from this disruption that occurred? And is a future disruption going to occur? AI is meeting the real world in a variety of senses. This is everything from the economic and financial demands being placed on AI companies through to the very real world considerations of will AI companies be able to get enough power to fuel their latest data centers? And then lastly, companies will need to watch a wider range of factors than ever. This is probably a good place to plug A3 Market Intelligence. I'd be remiss if I didn't say so. But there are such a wide range of factors. Tariffs, even after this kind of trade detente, are still sitting higher than I think they have been in the US for 50 years. So people that are 20 years older than me have never seen tariffs in this environment to this level. So understanding these factors and seeing how they can impact your business means that you need to seek out a wide range of data sources and stay informed on how they are going to impact your clients, impact your business, impact the downstream. So I think that gives us a few minutes here if we wanted to take a couple of questions from the audience. We'll have somebody be coming around with a microphone. So if you have any questions for myself or for Alex, please just raise your hand. It would be great to hear from you.
1 point, credit to Blake Griffin. One thing I didn't mention, if you're tracking uncertainty and you want a metric to go with that, there's an interesting data set called the Economic Uncertainty Index. Thank you. The Economic Uncertainty Index by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and it basically shows that recent data, uncertainty in the marketplace is as high as it was since it peaked in COVID-19, and it has not yet started to come down. So measurably, uncertainty is a driver, uncertainty generally in the marketplace. So credit to Blake there. And if there are, we do have a couple minutes, so if there's any questions, fire away. Okay, well, you know how to find us. If you have any questions, we're happy to send you the data, but thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.